Chapter 16, Lylan 5.1, June 14th, 496 BC. His love had bid him walk until the earth swallow him up, and then to remain there. So Hemhut walked until the ground began to give beneath his feet, as though the earth had hidden a trough of thick water disguised as sand, a trap for the wandering animal. She told him that the phenomenon would one day come to be known as quicksand, and that it occurred when there was a geological disturbance sufficient to cause liquid and soil to lose viscosity and separate to become a gel-like mush. She told him that objects would sink into the quicksand until the buoyancy of the object was reflected by a density ratio between the displaced quicksand and the object in question. Human beings, for example, would only sink up to their waist, provided they did not panic and dig themselves deeper, embedding themselves more and more with rapid movement. The best thing to do to escape being caught in quicksand, she explained, is to pivot one's body, gradually make oneself horizontal, leveraging whatever solid handholds one can find, and redistributing the weight, and then to eventually pull free and roll away to safety. So he would have to force his way deeper until he was completely concealed, as the earth would not claim him unaided. Hemhut waded through the patch of liquefied earth, and he made himself heavier and heavier, denser and denser still, so that he might fall deeper, and deeper he fell. For the first several decades, he aided many animals unfortunate enough to be ensnared by his mushy tomb to become free. Then the water dried and the soil solidified, awaiting the day the waters returned. But the water never returned in sufficient supply to create a quicksand mixture for the rest of the time in which it served as the giant station, and the ground eventually hardened, making it safe for the passing animal to again grace him with their company somewhere just above his head. So he passed the centuries, encased underground, listening. Finally the day came. He heard her voice, the voice of his love, over the wind and through the rock and past the humdrum of the other animals. She was here again at last. He turned to face her direction, twisting the patch of rock around him, and he climbed out of the patch of ground, clumps of cemented dirt raining from him as he moved. He left a large cavity behind him in the ground, and he considered what might now happen to the place he'd been made to wait. But he could not dawdle on ponderings irrelevant to the work of his love, and he left the hole in the ground where it was. Lylan had not instructed him to fill in the hole. She had instructed him to walk in the direction of her voice until he find her and nothing more, so he did that and nothing more. The fifth coming of Lylan was in the body of a little girl named Aurelia. She lived in Rome under trying times. Battles for supremacy and the right to the Roman throne made it a difficult time to live. There was much civility, but there was also much disarray. Aurelia had lived a quiet, peaceful life and had known nothing of suffering until visions of the torments of others suddenly became inescapable. She did not know it, but she had just undergone a hormonal change as she'd entered maturity, and with it had come the powers of her true self. She was seeing through the eyes of others, those closest in proximity to her at first, but then it spread to everyone, everywhere. She was everyone all at once, and herself besides. She reasoned her abilities well, as she was well educated, but she could not reconcile the suffering she saw, and she straightway went on a day-long crusade. Little 9-year-old Aurelia ran down the streets of Rome and found those committing their atrocities in the cracks and crevices and shadows of the city, and yanked them out of their horrid content, exposing them to as many as would pay attention. She would not stand for it, and she, in short order, had a group of people following her, aiding her in the condemnation of those she revealed, and remarking at her marvelous gift, declaring that she must be of divine birth from one of the gods. There was much conversation in Latin and Greek, debating which of the many gods she could have spawned from to have been given such a gift. As she traversed the roads with her ever-growing following, she finally came upon something of such disgust that she decidedly unleashed her pack of followers on the perpetrator. "There is a man in that house raping his own mother," she said in Greek, then pointed to the house to the refrain of gasping from the outraged crowd. "She is injured and cannot fight him. I think he intends to murder her when he is done. I have to rest. He is yours. Do with him as you will. I shall return here tomorrow, and we shall continue to cleanse the city of such vermin." And with that, she left the infuriated, adrenaline-fueled mob to storm the house, where they indeed found a wailing woman at the mercy of her dim-witted son, and made short work of tearing him apart before aiding the poor woman. Aurelia was left in peace, and she returned home. None that followed her had seen where she'd gone, and none of them knew her name or anything more about her. Most of them stayed where she had left them, even spent the night in the street, awaiting her return the following day. But she was never seen again. Lyelin's predictive powers were without rival, and it was amazing to see how her giant could walk right through the city gates, down its roads, past its many windows and doors, and all without ever being seen. He came late in the night, but there were still many eyes around as he followed the sound of her voice to Aurelia's home, and reached in and plucked the sleeping child from her bed and lifted her out of the window, all of them looking away as he quietly passed. This is why he could not stop to fill in the hole he'd left in his wake when he'd emerged, despite his desire to. He could very easily be seen and start an uncontainable chain reaction if he were to waver at all from the word of his love. This seemed to be what she feared most of all, and she told him frequently how important it was that he remain invisible, so he obeyed her every command. He was resolved to never again hesitate to follow her word, forever traumatized by what his lack of such resolve had cost them, forever branded with guilt and shame. He had taken hope from the world, and now he had to suffer for it. The gray giant woke the sleeping vessel, and she did not scream. She looked deep into him as he gently set her down, recognizing him in some intuitive way, too well educated to presume him a god, but not entirely dismissive of the possibility. Then the vessel spoke to the giant in Greek and said, "Hello, who are you?" Hemhut did not understand, and he touched his fingers to her temples and said, "Hello, Lyelin." Then Aurelia was gone, and Lyelin, in the language of her love, said, "Hello, Hemhut." And Hemhut walked out of Rome with Lyelin in his arms, never seen by a soul, except of course by the 4 people that they had to kill on their way out, who only saw them briefly. Alexander 13, June 9th, 45,796 BC. It had been a week since Hemhut had sent the amalgamator away with its instructions, and despite his initial reservations, he was delighted to have Lyelin with him. His initial plan was to work out a way to restore habitability to Tuwala, but since the recollection of his now fully intact and restored memory gave him knowledge of its true fate, he knew now that Tuwala was without hope and beyond help. In the week since Tuwala was vacated, he and his love had relished every moment spent together. Every day he wove a new wreath of flowers for her that she wore like a crown, and every day she made him laugh, and their love blossomed into the truest of all loves ever known by 2 beings. She asked him loads of questions, just as she always had, but it wasn't until that first week had gone by that she started really digging into the wealth of knowledge now at her fingertips. "You know everything, right, Hemhut?" she asked him, as they lay on a meadow side by side, holding hands and watching the clouds stir. "I know nothing, my love," he said, "but I believe in many things." "What do you mean by that?" She rolled up on his side and onto the top of his chest and sat on her knees, looking down at him as he lay on his back. Knowledge is limited by one's means of perception. Imagine how little we would know of anything if we had never evolved eyes as higher life forms. These limitations, among other things, make assertion of truth unattainable, leaving only the properties that which one might observe or experience of any given interaction to be always only speculative, because perhaps we are lacking a sensory organ, he said, and perhaps there is more to experience, perhaps even evidence of some of the more mysterious interactions between things that defy reason by way of observation using our limited sensory capabilities, like the influence of dark matter over normal matter. Maybe such things are as plain as starlight, but as the starlight necessitates the use of eyes to see it, because we are lacking in function, we can never hope to experience it, even though it is at work right under our noses. My love, it is possible that none of this may even be real, that existence is not true, because, for all intents and purposes, it is only happening inside our heads, and logically, the universe should not exist at all. She had laid down on her belly as he was talking, and she propped her chin up with the cradle of both her hands, elbows on his chest, feet kicking in the air, and looked him face to face, laying on top of him as they talked. Her flower wreath was pink today, one of her many favorite colors. She asked him, "Why should the universe not exist? That's a little silly." "Because," he said, It is impossible for it to be real. Not impractical or improbable, but impossible. And yet here it seems to be. Our experience of existence happens in our brains. That alone speaks of disconnect from an intuitively actual existence. The place where we experience sight is not in the place that we see from. The place where we feel pain is not in the place where we are injured. We are already elsewhere, experiencing life through conduits, meager vessels of matter. Just like while in a dream, one cannot say for certain whether existence is real or simply an unconscious fabrication of their mind. No one can claim to know for certain whether or not they exist at all, because the only tools at our disposal to verify existence reside in what may be a false existence, namely our senses. In short, if the universe is real, we can never know. "But what about me?" she said, her ears pricked up. "Don't you think that I am real?" "It's not about what I think, my love," he said. "The truth is true whether one knows it or not. I love you, and you feel very real to me, but perhaps that is the whole point. Maybe if reality is an illusory effect after all, the temporary experience of life ends with the awakening to an altogether new, truer experience, perhaps where one can declare that they exist with confidence, one where the senses we may lack in this reality are already in place. Perhaps death is more like waking up than it is like going to sleep." "But didn't you say that you died once before?" she asked, stopping her legs from kicking. "You don't remember anything from when you were dead?" "Lylan, I am still dead," he said. "I am a spirit, made tangible by my will alone." "Oh." She didn't know what to say. After a befuddled moment, she made a little four-fingered fist and knocked on his chest. "You feel real to me." "I did not say that I was not real, only not living," he said. "I am very real, stuck between two worlds, one might say, only with no knowledge of anything beyond this reality. I am a soul, and I don't belong in the world of the living, yet I remain." "Then you are between living and dead? What made you this way?" she asked. She was learning more about her love today than she had in all the 5 years they'd spent together since she was rescued from the Potreps in the Tenethet Cat, and the little mouse girl was intrigued. Hemhut spoke Lylan's dialect of Tawalin perfectly, but every here and there she would catch him throwing in English words, sometimes by mistake, and sometimes because of necessity due to use of an English word with no Tawalin equivalent, like rocket and satellite. I dare say it was the awakening of my full intellectual capability that made me to remain in existence after my brain had perished, but I honestly don't know. He smiled back at her. "Boy, I bet you don't say that very often," Lylan cracked, and Hemhut laughed. "So, you don't know anything for certain, because you may only think that what you think you know is real, but you can see the future," she said. "So, assuming reality is real, you know everything about it, right?" Hemhut didn't have to think long. "Not everything." "Yes," she said in triumph. "Tell me what you don't know. I want to hear about what puzzles you, my love." Then she turned over to lay, facing upward atop the giant's chest, the top of her head just below his chin, ears angled up to hear his reply. "Well, the very thing that which we were just discussing I find quite perplexing," he said. "It is reasonable to assume that because there is typically no recollection of existence prior to conception, there should be no experience of existence beyond death. Only I am proof that this reasoning is flawed. My very existence is evidence of life beyond death, and yet I do not truly know what it feels like to be dead. For though I died, I never let it stop me. For a time I feared I might be doomed to remain forever in this state of non-death, that I may never completely die." "That does not seem like something to fear, Hemhut," she said. "I wish I could live forever." "That is why I fear it, my love," he said. "After you die, I will be without you, without reason to further exist. I hope with all my heart that there is an afterlife so that you may go on, and I hope that when I one day end this endless death, I may find you again. For as much as I wish that I could, I cannot grant your wish, my love. Our only chance to be together forever is if I follow you into the unknown and find a way to die, and I will." She stood up on his breast and looked down at him with her arms folded across her chest. I don't know how I feel about that. What about the other Tuwalans? They will be fine, he said. The amalgamator will take care of them. Besides, I am not the same Hemhut that sent them away. When it restored my memory, I became my complete self, and Lylin, I don't care about the other Tuwalans. All I care about is you. I have been searching for you, waiting for you for longer than time has been in existence. Now that I am with you, it kills me to know that I must one day let you go. Every moment we draw nearer to your death, I die a little more inside. My heart shatters in mourning for you, even as you live. Don't live this way, she said. I am alive. Love me and live with me, and enjoy every moment with me while you still can. But Hemhut, letting me go is about more than me dying. You have to move on. You have to take care of the Tuwalans. No, I will only do more harm than good, he said. There is no path to a future of prosperity for them but the path they beat for themselves. I have looked into the future and have seen them thrive, my love. They do just fine without me. She shook her head and said, I can't believe that you are suggesting that you abandon our people so that you can go off and look for a place to die. How are you ever going to do it anyway? How do you kill a dead man? He looked long at her and said, I have found a way. She started pacing back and forth across his torso and then stopped and looked at him, suddenly sympathizing with his position at the sight of the mournful look on his face. You really can't help them? She asked. I ruined Tuwala Lylin, he said. The Tuwalans could have gone on living here for thousands of more years had I not ushered in its death. Though the second son and its conspirator will claim it in the end, it is now uninhabitable far before it ever should have been, and all because I interfered. I am a danger to life. If I lead them anywhere, it will be only to their graves. Trust me, they are better off with the amalgamator in charge of them. And if you die, maybe we can be together in death? She stopped pacing, awaiting his response before continuing. There is hope, my love. Hope in death where there is none besides. Hemhut stirred and she hopped down as he sat up. Hemhut, she said. Yes, my love. How much longer do I have to live? Hemhut looked her in the eye and held her gaze for what seemed like a long time. Then he said, It is a cruel fate to have the circumstances of one's death known to them, my love. You will live for around another 100 years, but I will not specify beyond that. It is bad enough that I am burdened with having to watch you die all of the time as the future unfolds to me. You should not also have to suffer this fate. Hemhut, she approached him and gently hugged him, her whiskers gently caressing his stone flesh. I had no idea. You have been forced to see my death every day? He stayed quiet. Then, as they broke away from their embrace, he said, looking very beaten, No, my love. I am forced to experience your death every moment of every day. I try not to think about it, but in the end, it only makes me cherish this time with you all the more, and I don't want it to end. Very well, my love. She threw her arms around him again, and the tears she'd been fighting off finally surfaced. She remembered how she'd felt a week ago when she thought that her Hemhut was dead, and how her whole body had radiated pain and anguish, and she imagined what it must feel like to be him, seeing her die, helpless to stop it, watching the hour draw nearer and nearer. With a cracking voice, muffled by her lips being pressed against his head, she said, Okay, can we talk about something else now? He smiled at her, so very happy to be with her. For not only was he not alone, he was with his true love. Lylin 5.2, June 15th, 496 BC. The sun was rising for the rest of the country, but Hemhut and Lylin were traversing a path carved between two mountains, forever in the direction she had pointed, and they would not see the sun for hours more to come. As he passed the crags and juts, Lylin atop her perch on his shoulder, he asked her, Where are we going, my love? The future is going to undergo massive changes, Hemhut. Take a great departure from that which once was to be. she said. We have 14 weeks to shape it as we need, to redirect the river. The machine I spoke of, the one that can destroy Daniel Dwyer, it will never come to be unless the right people are born to enlighten the world with the ideas that make it possible. She stopped, looking deep into the future, reveling in visions of the eventual destruction of her nemesis. Then she continued. In order for that to happen, the wrong people have to die, but Hemhut, with every death, with every change to the coming bloodlines of man, more and more of our people disappear. I fear that by the time the end comes, there will be nothing left worth saving. There will be only a world populated by strangers, all of them in service, indentured to the demon. He thinks that he can change them. He thinks he will have changed them, but he will see them for the animals that they are when left to their own devices, when I give them back their freedoms. Surely some are worth saving, Hemhut said. The demon cannot have driven all of the good from the world. I do not intend to exterminate them, my love, but in the end, the decision will be in the hands of the demon, she said, and he will make the right choice for his people. I have foreseen it. Only I will also be dead, my love. What? Hemhut stopped moving and Lila nudged him on. No, then there must be another way. There is not, my love, I'm sorry, she said, but in my final life, I must sacrifice myself and die alongside the demon. It can happen no other way. At least those people that shall remain will have you to guide them. Lila. Hemhut was lost for words. He felt like crying, only he couldn't, his tear ducts having long since been dried and sealed. You must not deviate, Hemhut, please, she said. In every other version of the future, he hunts me down, tortures me, mutilates me. Please, I want at least for my final death to serve some purpose. The only way he will die is if he follows me into death's arms, and it is the only way that I get to die with any dignity, finally caging that which I unleashed upon this world. I am sorry. I love you so much, Hemhut. If things could be any different, they would be, but this is the way it must be. Why did you wait until now to tell me this? He reasonably asked. Everything has to happen at the right time, my love, she said, referring to his momentary pause in forward movement seconds ago. Speaking of which, I never answered your question. There are many pivotal moments in history in the coming centuries, all shaped by our hands. We must first ensure that the Romans have victory over Lucius Tarquinius Superbus at the Battle of Lake Regillus in the months ahead. If there is not a decisive victory, the Tarquins will again attempt to reclaim their seat on the throne and succeed where they must fail. This single event will also ensure that an attempt by the Athenians to take Sicily in 80 years will be thwarted. Another would-be disaster that we will have averted. Another necessary change to the future timeline. Lila, please talk to me, he said, looking ahead. She paused. Don't be upset, my love. There is no other way. There is only for us to enjoy what time we have left together the best we can. I was never going to live forever after all. I'm sorry. What if you were wrong? He said. No, she said in defiance. Why can I not try to fight him? No, she said again with the same defiant tone. You don't know, she cut him off with a raised voice. I do know. He huffed and continued on, never feeling more like a dog on a leash than as he did in that moment. I'm sorry, Hemhut, she said, but listen to me. If he so much as sees you, it is all over. Do you understand? If you stray from the path I lay before you, you will never see me again. He will win, and not you or I or anyone else will be able to stop him. Eventually, he will lead mankind off of the earth, and when he discovers that there is life elsewhere, he will learn to blanket the cosmos with his presence, dominating every place in existence where there are creatures to dominate. What we do today, my love, spares the breath of the heavens from this otherwise inevitable hell. You cannot fight him, Hemhut. Do not try it. I forbid it. You are never to have any kind of contact with the demon, ever. Everything will suffer, my love, everything everywhere, if you so much as look at him, if you so much as touch him. Leave him to me, and everything will be as it should. Surrender your vigil, Stray from my word, and the demon will take me, Hemhut. We will never even see him coming. This is the only way." They didn't speak for several minutes. Hemhut, normally understanding, complicit, and sweet, was reasoning in his mind why she was right, reconciling the notion that he would have to allow her to sacrifice herself, and could not in the end share, at least for a while, the world with her the way that they had intended. He was not happy, but he was without choices. He had to obey the command of his love. It was just that simple. Finally, having dismissed his own inner voice, despite his very heart pleading for him to save his love, having decided that she knew what he didn't, and that he must help her if he could, he broke the silence. "Lylan, how do you kill a dead man?" "I have found a way," she said, staring off into everywhere. He glanced to see her in his periphery astride his shoulder, and he asked, "What more must we do, my love?" "So much, my sweet," she said. "We must ensure that the outbreak of bubonic plague in 224 BC aids future Emperor Qin Shi Huang's effort to unify the warring states of the East, which will then forever after bear his name and become China. Unfortunately, in part of doing so, he will institute book-burning ceremonies in order to assert his dominance, destroying much wisdom and invention in the process. He imposes a policy of legalism upon his people and deems many harmless practices punishable by death. Even some of the most respected scholars who attempt to interfere with the forthcoming mass book burnings will be burned alive as punishment for trying to preserve the knowledge and hinder the burning." "That is terrible," Hemhut remarked. "Why are they doing these things to one another, and why must this come about? Lylan, there is another way. Just keep looking. There must be something. You mustn't let this happen." "Hemhut, listen to me and hear what I say," she said sternly. "The bloodlines of old have already been tainted by those spawned of the initial changes. The world is now populated by people who should never have been born to begin with, and the phenomenon is spreading fast. The people of the earth will only ever again be safe when the demon is gone, but those who remain will not be the people intended to live in the time they live. I don't know what to expect from them. Even our own people are not going to be our people for much longer, as the world has been so drastically altered that their lives have also changed in kind, most for the worse. The changes we must make in order to deny the demon his victory will also result in the annihilation of our people. Our utopia is gone, Hemhut. All that we can do now is what is best for humanity at large. Unfortunately, there is an ocean of blood to swim between here and there, but my hands are truly tied, my love. This is the only path to safety. This is the only way to save everyone everywhere. Besides, you would not feel so much guilt as you do if you could see what I see. It doesn't matter. These people are going to kill each other regardless of what we do. Whether we interfere or not, the humans will have their blood. It is the animal that it has always been. You wouldn't dream of denying me my wishes if you could glimpse the terrors that are the alternatives. They are demon spawn. It is in their nature to do as they do. This demon is a master of hatred and pain, Hemhut. It follows that the future he would force me to create be pockmarked with devastating global events driven by hatred. He is evil, and he hates me most of all, perhaps more than anything else. I don't know why, but he hates me with a fury none can ever match. Even in futures I have feigned in my fantasies wherein I am complicit with his every demand and willingly surrender and offer my services, he still teaches me the unending limits of pain and suffering, and for doing nothing more than daring to exist. He still brutalizes me with such hatred, and for so long, Hemhut, decades upon decades, full centuries or more sometimes, he keeps me alive only to prolong my suffering, only to invent new ways to keep hurting me. If you love me, do not stray from my word, and never hesitate again. Hesitation welcomes unwanted futures. As you can see." Hemhut felt ashamed. He'd ignored her cries, ignored them for selfish reasons, and now their paradise was lost. Hope was gone. He would from then on do his best to follow her word, no matter what she should ask of him. He would try his very best. he said. I am so sorry, my love. Can you ever forgive me? There is nothing to forgive, Hamhut. The past is immutable and cannot be changed, only voiced or silenced, she said. Besides, I alone am to blame, my sweet love. I just needed you to not let things get worse. But it's okay. I have found this path. Perhaps it was fate all along, my love. We can still destroy the demon. Maybe this was always the only way. Sometimes things cannot be changed. For I have surveyed countless other versions of the events to come, and this is the only way. I'm sorry. I love you. I love you, Lylin. I am going to miss you when you are gone, he said. We both knew the day would eventually come when I would no longer return, and I wish that we could spend more time with one another. But the reason we have so little time to make so many changes, Hamhut, is because I must die when our tasks are through in 14 weeks. Just as I had to the last 3 times die so young, so must I do from now on. The longer I linger, the more likely it is that he will find me, and if he finds me... She paused. I am sorry, Hamhut, that it leaves us so little time, but it is all very clear to me now, and I understand what it is the demon wants and why he wants it so badly, and why it is so important that he be denied his prize. Yes, my love, Hamhut said. He shall not have the world. She looked longingly at him, the love of her life, as he faced ever forward, again fighting back her tears. No, she said. He shall not.